There's a brand new bromance budding in MMA, folks. Chechen-born Swedish UFC fighter Khamzat Chimaev and the Reaper Robert Whittaker have expressed warm praise towards each other recently. We might even get to see the two champions train together in the near future. Robert, being one of the most prominent names in middleweight, does seem like the perfect person for Chimaev, who's rumored to be moving up into the division to train with. Let's begin. First off, how did the Whittaker-Chimaev duo even come into being? If you're a UFC fanatic, you're probably already caught up to speed on Khamzat Chimaev's whole missed weight controversy, but we'll give you a brief recap. Basically, last Saturday, the 10th of September, Chimaev was all set to face off against Nate Diaz. In comes the ceremonial weigh-ins, and dun dun dun, he's found to be 7.5 pounds above the settled weight limit. As you can imagine, this caused quite the ruckus, with the cards having to be shuffled last minute, and pitching the Swedish fighter against Holland instead. And though Chimaev won the rescheduled fight, the press latched onto the weight controversy, and Dana White, UFC president, eventually shared that he'd probably have to move up to the middleweight division. Looking at his past record, welterweight has always been where the fighters shined, but he hasn't done too bad in the middleweight either. Now, it was after his victory over Holland that a question regarding fighting Robert Whittaker was pitched to him. Chimaev unexpectedly praised the 31-year-old champion, saying that he was a nice guy and that he'd much rather go against bad guys. Continuing, he said he's really good, like one of the best guys in the world. I was watching his fight. I'm a big fan, so I watch all things. I watch how he trains and all these things. He also mentioned how Robert, unlike many other fighters, had never badmouthed him to try to instigate a fight. That's high praise. Next, Whittaker talks about Chimaev's impressive win over Holland. The hurriedly put together match did end up earning Khamzat Chimaev a pretty magnificent victory against Holland. His 12-0-0 victory came about with him scoring a first-round submission just 2 minutes and 13 seconds in. Robert had a lot to comment on regarding the fight. Speaking to Middle Easy, he said that he was really impressed with the Swedish fighter's performance. Referring to the fight, he described his wrestling and grappling as top tier. UFC isn't a stranger to the trash-talking personas of its fighters, and so for a champion to openly admire another is a pretty big deal. I can't express enough how wild it was to see him just go in there and manhandle Holland that way. It was crazy, were Whittaker's remarks. He even got technical with his comments, saying that people often don't realize how hard it is to hold down an unwilling opponent, and the fact that Khamzat was able to do that flawlessly just speaks for his confidence and skill sets. Sticking with the confidence theme, the Australian-New Zealand fighter said that only other fighters can truly appreciate the sheer willpower it takes to completely invest yourself in a fight and just not let go of the chance of victory. This was another quality he noticed in Chimaev. Apart from that, he drew a comparison between Israel Adesanya and Khamzat, saying that he'd like to see them pitted against each other, just because their styles were so different. Plus, he could use Chimaev as his redemption chip against Adesanya, which is really just a win-win situation. Moving on, how and when will a training sesh between the two be on the cards? In a post-fight interview, 28-year-old Chimaev announced that he'd like to train with Robert instead of facing him in the ring. This, he mentioned, because number one, Whittaker is second only to Israel Adesanya in the middleweight division rankings, and number two, Chimaev himself needs to polish his skills in that category now. Even though Dana White suggested that there are many possibilities for Khamzat's future, moving up to middleweight is a surefire route to be taken. Borz's request to train with the Reaper reached the latter, of course. He responded positively, saying that he's happy with that and certainly open to the idea. He even considered it a compliment that Chimaev, the phenomenal fighter in his words, would want to train with him. Now don't go being humble, Mr. Whittaker. Another persuading factor was that the Swede has also previously trained with English mixed martial artist Darren Till, so he could probably teach Whittaker a thing or two as well. The Australian fighter was asked whether he thought Borz stacked up well against the other middleweight champions, and his reply came without any hesitation. Talking about the Holland fight, he said that since Khamzat had managed to one-up his opponent pretty easily and was a big dude, he could most likely compete in the 185-pound bout well enough. Whittaker also addressed his new friend's remark about wanting to fight bad guys, saying that he can surely get behind that, even going as far as to declare that it's been fun to muck on people together. Seems like we're gonna see the two hunting UFC bad guys together together pretty soon. With the way they're talking to the press, we're not complaining. Now, on to other related news. Firstly, Alex Pereira's impressive skills outside of UFC fighting. The 35-year-old Brazilian martial artist is apparently quite skilled in the archery department. He's a 2-division Glory kickboxing champion and the next UFC middleweight title challenger. Both pretty big deals in his career, not to mention his 2 wins over Israel Adesanya. But the fighter keeps himself busy outside the octagon, and a recent video posted on UFC by the BT Sport Twitter account demonstrated that perfectly. In the clip, Powhatan kicked a football into the air and skillfully shot the projectile object down with a bow and arrow before it hit the ground. Phew, that takes some serious talent. The caption said, "Target practice outside of the octagon," as if the man could get any scarier. We don't know about you, but we definitely agree. Pereira is currently on a streak of consecutive 3 wins over Sean Strickland, Bruno Silva, and Andreas Michailidis. Like, come on. The Brazilian's last defeat was in October of 2015 against Quamelo Tony. What's next for the fighter? Well, in UFC 281's main event, Pereira is expected to face off against Israel Adesanya on November 12th. This epic fight is going to take place in Madison Square Garden, New York, with the co-main event being Carla Esparza and Weili Zhang. We can't wait to see Powhatan in action once again. Next, you won't get to see Garbrandt versus Yahya yet again, people. Seems like Cody Garbrandt and the Brazilian fighter are doomed to never be able to fight against each other. Why do we say that? Well, if you remember earlier this year in UFC Vegas 58 in July, the two were set as opponents, but Yahya bailed on the match, leaving Garbrandt stranded. Now, in the UFC Vegas 61 card on October 1st, the UFC bantamweight veteran is having to withdraw from a 3-round match against Cody. This has previously put matchmakers in a fix, and a late replacement is being searched for currently. As you may know, Garbrandt has had back-to-back losses against Kai Kara France and Rob Front, making his position a mere 1-5 with 4 unfortunate knockout losses. Yahya, on the other hand, hasn't faced such a miserable streak. The 38-year-old fighter is expected to gain his 3rd consecutive win after gaining victory over Ray Rodriguez and Kyung Ho Kang. Seems like the two aren't that evenly matched. Last but not least, Nate Diaz already has BKFC offers after quitting UFC. After UFC 279's main event last Saturday, where Diaz beat Tony Ferguson in a 4-round knockout, he announced exciting news. The 37-year-old fighter is leaving UFC to create and manage his own company, Real Fight Inc. Diaz is now a free agent, and soon he's going to be running his MMA and boxing-themed company. But offers are being extended to the fighter left and right. One such offer came from bare-knuckle fighting competition president David Feldman. The president is planning to make aggressive moves to lure Diaz into accepting. He even has an opponent in mind for him, UFC veteran Mike Perry. I can't tell you whether he's coming or not, but I can tell you that we want him here at Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, and we're gonna do everything that we can do to get him here at Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, revealed Feldman while speaking to Bloody Elbow. He does plan on respecting Diaz's wish to eventually re-sign with the UFC by giving him a substantial window. Guess we'll just have to wait and see what's next in store for Nate Diaz. We have to say though, an epic Perry-Diaz BKFC fight sounds amazing. That's all the news regarding Robert Whittaker's words about training with Khamzat Chimaev that we have for you today. Do you think the two are stylistically similar enough to make a collaboration possible? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.